One fact tuning into today's video, we're going to have a look at weather for the next 8 to 10 days today, which will be taking us from something like the 16th to the 18th of January. Things are getting a bit complicated in terms of this easterly wind that it looked like we're going to get, or it still looks as though we're going to get some sort of easterly next week, but things are getting a bit complicated with how quickly it comes in, how cold it's going to be. It's always a case in the British Isles that it's hard to get easterly winds in. And yeah, we're having a bit of a struggle this morning to see what's happening. But I will show you the charts in a moment. Now, before I get on with that, just want to talk about the advertising. There's video ads on my pages at GazWeatherBiz.com, and if you keep playing on the video ad, you'll be supporting GazWeatherBiz.com. Thanks very much for doing that. So these are the 500 millibar height anomaly flow charts. We've got the ECMWF on the left, the GFS is on the right. 500 millibars is an area in the atmosphere, as you know, where weather is taking place. Basically, high pressure, low pressure is being moved around by the jet stream, which runs above, and as those areas of high pressure, low pressure move around, that is essentially what gives us weather. Now, quite interesting, both the ECMWF and the GFS going for another very deep and cold trough to plunge down into central and eastern parts of the United States through the course of next week. So you're going to be hearing more about, well, probably not the polar vortex, hopefully, because a lot of the reporting on that has been very, very strange. But you're going to be hearing more about cold air anyway, pushing down into central and eastern parts of the United States. They are having a very cold winter over in America. I predicted it would be a cold winter for the States. It has indeed taken place. It always looked very likely to be a cold winter for central and eastern parts of America, and that's indeed what they're getting. Now, for us, we've got this ridge in the Atlantic on both the ECMWF and the GFS. On the GFS, the ridge is actually going up towards a blocking feature sitting to the north and the northeast of the country, and then both the ECMWF and the GFS has this cold trough of low pressure sitting just to the west and to the southwest of the country, and this is what's giving us the problem. This trough of low pressure to the south, it wants to cut off and move away to the south and eventually introduce a cold easterly wind, but how quickly that happens is open to a lot of doubt. If that trough doesn't cut off to the south of the country, if it stays sitting more or less to the west of the southwest of the country, it's never going to allow that cold air to move in from the east and the northeast around this blocking feature. Both models do have sitting to the north and the northeast of the country. Both models have these two areas of blocking to the northeast of the country, but it's how quickly that trough, the blue colours here, the low pressure, it's how quickly that moves away to the south that will determine whether we ever really get that easterly wind in across the country. The GFS temperature ensembles are showing us the problem. We've got a lot of scatter here within the ensemble for the next 2 weeks. Remember, the red line is where we should be at this time of year in terms of upper air temperatures, but they're useful for indicating what weather's like to be doing down on the surface. So red line is where we should be. We're going to be around average in terms of the temperatures for the next couple of days. Then we're going to go a bit above average at the start of next week when an area of low pressure comes in. But then it's after that, as you get through to the middle of January, this 15th of January, just here, next Wednesday, it's after that that we get all of this scatter. Some of the members of the ensemble are still going cold, going for some sort of a cold snap, cold spell between, say, the 15th and the 20th, but a lot of the members aren't ever really going for it, and that's the complication, because the members of the ensemble that go for the cold will be shifting that trough away to the south and bringing the easterly wind in. The members of the ensemble that are keeping it relatively mild will be keeping that trough of low pressure around the country, restricting the easterly wind probably to Scotland and maybe northeastern parts of England. Now notice there's also a lot of precipitation coming up next week, so we will, I think, be indicating quite a lot of rain. If the cold air gets in, some of that could turn to snow, but does the cold air ever get in? That's going to be the big question. Now, the temperature anomalies for the next week, taking us from Thursday the 9th to Thursday the 16th of January, show that we're going to be going a little bit below average, actually, for the next week. Haven't seen this much this winter, but yeah, we're going down into blue colours. Only but very pale blue colours, palest blue colours, so only very slightly below average, and even on the south coast we're still a little bit above average, but just about going down into below average temperature. That's the first time, I think, that's happened on these charts this winter. Notice Scandinavia turning very, very cold, and that's where the area of high pressure is going to be sitting, and the air will be originating from. So if we can get that easterly wind in, there is going to be a lot of cold air up over Scandinavia, so we won't have any problems, I don't think, with cold air if the easterly gets in. So does the easterly get in on the latest GFS chart? Well, this is the 6 o'clock run of the GFS. First of all, starting off on Monday the 13th. And we're going to be bringing another area of low pressure in across the country on Monday with an active weather front bringing outbreaks of quite heavy rain. That rain could well stall across eastern parts of the country because the blocking area of high pressure is already developing over Scandinavia. It's going to hold everything up. So that front clearing away to the east will be problematical on Monday, and there could be some quite heavy and persistent rain there. It's not going to take much to get things flooding once again. Now eventually that low pressure and the weather front is just going to die a death to the east of the country, and then we sort of end up on Tuesday the 14th in a bit of a no man's land. But another area of low pressure is developing out in the Atlantic. Notice the high pressure is going up over Scandinavia, going to 1025 millibars. As we go through to Wednesday the 15th, the next area of low pressure rattles in, and this is the one that's causing the complications. Does this sit over the country and delay or stop that easy wind getting in from the high pressure over Scandinavia, or does it sink south and cut off and eventually allow that easy wind to come in? Well, anyway, on Wednesday the 15th, we're going to bring another band of heavy rain in across the country, so it will be very wet on Wednesday the 15th. And then eventually, as we move through to Thursday the 16th, the latest 6 o'clock run of GFS wants to start to move that low pressure down to the south and start to back the winds into the east. Still a very wet scene. Could be 24 hours worth of really heavy and persistent rain across much of the country Wednesday into Thursday. That rain could turn to snow across Scotland as that easy wind begins to push in. Finally, by the time we get through to Friday the 17th, the low pressure is cutting off to the south over Spain and Portugal, and we're bringing in this easterly wind then, and that's a cold wind. We'll be bringing wind showers into the east of the country. And that easterly wind stays with us through into next weekend, Saturday the 18th and Sunday the 19th. We're bringing in that east to northeasterly wind. That could well be bringing in more heavy and wintry showers into eastern parts of the country next weekend. So that easterly does get in eventually, but what's interesting about this is that certainly on the GFS, the easterly is not getting any closer. It's staying around the 168-hour week away mark. It's not really getting much closer. So we've got to see this coming closer before we can start to have good confidence in it. But nevertheless, the GFS is still indicating that eventually that low pressure cuts off to the south, and eventually we do open the floodgates to that cold easterly wind. The ECMWF, again for Monday, have got weather fronts coming in across the country producing heavy rain, slow moving rain as well, because they're not clearing the east of the country easily because pressure is rising up over Scandinavia. As we move through to Tuesday, the low pressure is sort of sliding away to the south. It looks like we're going to open the floodgates then to that easterly wind. But the problem is the next area of low pressure coming in on Wednesday the 15th of January. Here it comes, the low pressure moving in again, heavy rain pushing through the country, just holding the easterly up, and there we go. Let's go through to Thursday the 16th. The easterly is still being held up by that low pressure to the west of the country. We've still got weather fronts here strung out, so Wednesday, Thursday, very, very wet period. Potentially. Eventually it's the same idea as the GFS, which is to move the low pressure southwards on Friday the 17th and finally begin to open the floodgates to that colder easterly airstream. And then quite interesting to go through to Saturday and Sunday the 18th and 19th, because we're keeping that low pressure very close to the south of the country, and we are bringing in this cold easterly flow, so there is the potential there for a bit of a battle. There's potential for somewhere possibly to get quite a lot of snow from that, to be honest. Bit uncertain about that one, but if the low pressure just stays just there, just to the south of the country, we'll still have weather fronts ingrained around it. With the cold air coming in, things could get very interesting. But again, the idea is that the easterly is not getting any closer with this. It's staying around that 168, 192 hour away mark. Now, finally, the GEM, which has been very bullish about this easterly, is still very bullish about it this morning. It's completely different. As we go through to Monday the 13th, already big changes. The low pressure out west is not getting in on Monday. We're not bringing that heavy rain in across the country. Much better blocking over Scandinavia and to the north of the country. And by Tuesday the 14th, we've already opened the door to the easterly. The low pressure is sliding away to the south. And yeah, we're opening the door to that easterly wind. Now, remember, the other models, the GFS and the ECM, do not bring that easterly wind in, really, until Friday the 17th. But the GEM, the Canadian, has it coming in as early as Tuesday, and that will be bringing a risk of wintry showers. And then things just get colder through the middle of next week. We're in a proper easterly flow. We're bringing instability in off the North Sea, so there would be snow showers coming in off the North Sea, possibly a longer spell of snow being signalled there for the southeast, that little kink in the eyes, but don't take that too seriously. But the idea is that the GM, very bullish still about bringing in that easterly wind through the early part of next week. There's the upper air temperature showing that by Wednesday the 15th, we're covered in bitterly cold air. And remember, at this point, the GFS and the ECM have another area of low pressure over the country, bringing copious amounts of rain and not particularly cold weather. Let's go through to Thursday the 16th. The easterly is still there, particularly for England and Wales, with risk of snow. And through Friday the 17th, we easily persist as it does into next weekend. Although eventually the high pressure is starting to collapse down into the country, so the east is easing off a little bit and possibly bringing some slightly less cold air in from the southeast by day 10 Sunday the 19th. But again, don't take that too seriously. But the idea there is that the GEM is very progressive with the easterly. It's been very bullish about it all the way through since it started showing it last week. It's still very bullish about it. And there we go, the GEM is a completely different solution, has it turning cold as early as Tuesday. But the GFS and the ECMWF, they stall the low pressure over the country, delay that easterly getting in, and we don't really see any cold air until around, well, it's not quite true. Scotland does see some cold air from probably around Wednesday or Thursday, but most of the country doesn't see that cold easterly airstream until at least Friday the 17th of January. So big question marks about this easterly. We've got to just keep watching the models, really, see which way they go. It all hinges on that low pressure, whether it cuts off to the south and allows that easterly to come in. It's 50-50, I couldn't call it particularly, although I do rate the GEM actually, and as I say, the GEM is very bullish about this easterly. I rate the model quite highly. It's a lot better than it used to be. It had a big upgrade a couple of years ago, so it's a pretty decent model, and maybe the EC will get in as early as Tuesday. We'll just have to wait and see. We might have a big flip with the GFS and the ECM in the next 24 hours or so. I'll keep you posted whatever happens, so keep checking that, and that's it for now. Thanks for watching.